So are you or somebody you know commanding, intense, confrontational, and like to tell it how it is? Are they well respected, but at the end of the day, they just want to be loved? Then you might be a type 8 on the Enneagram, the leader, defined by your need to feel strong by avoiding feeling weak or vulnerable. Type 8s love a good fight. They love to be confrontational and they love to challenge other people's opinions. So they can often be contrarians. They can be people who go against the grain and people who like to play devil's advocate. Somebody I know very well is in a relationship and him and his girlfriend are always going back and forth about pop culture topics. And he always wants to play devil's advocate. He loves to argue and play that contrarian role. Now, type 8s usually become the challenging type because they don't like direct intimacy. So they kind of go in this roundabout way where they get their intimacy by challenging you or seeing if you can fight back a little bit. They respect people who fight back and stick up for themselves if they're the ones that first antagonize them. So they kind of test people and see if they're really strong. Type 8s are the classic masculine, even in a feminine role. It's the masculine that we all kind of have in our heads, the toxic type. It's the masculine who wants to move forward and be in charge and be the leader and assert their dominance over people, the typical alpha male. But women have this trait too. It's in both men and women. They respect you if you go into a head-to-head clash with them and have an argument. They like to have it out. They like to have a competition. And if you can show them that you're as tough as they are, they'll respect you more. Even if you lose, they respect the challenge and the competition. These are MMA fighters. Every kind of fighter has that 8 energy where they can bang it out in the ring and then later on hug each other and have that respect. That's the classic 8. Most 8s secretly have a gentle soul that's like their inner child that they don't allow a lot of people to see. They might show it to you briefly for a second, but then they'll cover it up with all this masculine vibrato and stuff like that, because showing that side to people makes them feel vulnerable, and that's the whole thing that they're trying to avoid. Type 8s are allergic to superficiality. They hate superficial stuff. They can sense when somebody is really superficial and they despise them. They hate the surface level kind of go with the flow, popular opinion type of person. And they will sense that in people and try to call it out all the time. They really respect realness and authenticity. So an unhealthy 8 is a person that likes to steamroll people. They like to assert their dominance. They want to be very Andrew Tate-esque. They want to make sure you know who's in charge, and they don't want to give anybody else a chance to speak, and they kind of are very overbearing when they're in arguments, and they want to win the argument rather than have a positive outcome. They're more interested in winning when they're unhealthy. And that need to win kind of follows them and defines them in their toxicity. They start being sore losers. They start being people who need to assert their dominance in fistfights. They try to get into more fistfights so that they can show everybody and they can prove to everybody that they're not weak. And that kind of is counterintuitive to what they say, because if they really were not weak, the words of other people wouldn't bother them as much as they do, but they do. And so instead of being able to step back and have some objectivity over that, they go into a fist fight. And a lot of the times people will champion them. I know there's a lot of people in popular culture now where they just say the most out-of-pocket thing because they like the challenge and they like the kind of edge that it gives them, like they're brave and this bravado or whatever. And a lot of people will champion them for it, and that'll just dig their rabbit hole a little bit deeper because they see that people respect that and people are cheering them on, and they get this ego boost. And so they start to usually become worse at that point. The path for growth for 8s. So 8s have this gift of being able to be very, very passionate. A lot of their anger can be channeled into passion and into assertive energy. If they want to go and get something, they can go and get it. And sometimes they become stuck in this aggressive kind of posturing that they don't pursue any type of passion or anything that really moves their soul. And so once they find something where they can, whether it's making money or in a certain type of business or being a realtor, a lot of 8s are realtors. Once it's something that's competitive driven, they can excel in that, and they can channel that anger instead of fist fighting or excessive drinking like a lot of them like to do. They can get that competitive spirit in a productive way. And that's when the 8 starts to grow, is when they find a passion and they can pursue it and see real growth from it, increase their income, become somebody who sticks up for the little people. When an 8 is growing, they don't assert their will. Instead, they stand up for injustices. They stand up for the little guy who doesn't have a voice. They use their assertive energy to be protectors instead of bullies. Now, 8s are in the body space, so they deal with anger. They're the obvious anger. That means they have overt anger. That means they look the most like a body type. It will usually champion overt anger over passive aggressiveness or repressed anger. They just let it all out. There's no repressed anger within them, because when they're angry, you're going to know it, and it's going to be very overt. And that is sometimes their downfall. They can kind of be their own worst enemy, because they can get to a point where they can't control their anger, and it comes out, and they start spewing these however they feel and start, going off physically, like punching holes and, all this other stuff. And they kind of beat themselves up. They're their own worst enemy, because now they have to do a lot of cleaning up. They have to apologize to people. They have to fix what they broke. They usually go off the cuff and say something that they really, really regret, and then they have to clean that up. And sometimes people don't forget that kind of stuff. So 8s usually beat themselves up while they're trying to show that they're angry or, passionate. They're very passionate people, and they're not connected with any other emotion except for anger. So when they're sad, it looks angry. When they're happy, it looks kind of angry too. Like, it looks like this visceral kind of joy, like this kind of thing. When they're happy, when they're excited, when they're sad, when they're mad, like, it all just looks angry and aggressive. They're very aggressive people. That's what the body space does to you. The 2 wings of an 8 are, of course, the 9 and the 7. 8s moving into their 7 wing, they kind of become unhinged. We know the 7 is the wild child. They're the free spirit. They embody the adventure in life. So when 8s get their passion, or even when 7s move into their 8 wing and they get that passionate, visceral love of life, and they mix those two together, then they can be very domineering, aggressive people. These are the people that like rule the club world with their like promoters and nightclub owners, people like that who love the adventure but then mix it with this kind of 8 competitive edge where it's making money and it's bringing people together. It's making money and it's adventurous, it's exciting. That 7 wing is their excitement, their need to explore and their need to live that wild life. 8s have that side of them. They're childish side, that inner child. That's kind of what the 7 expresses themselves in. So they have the same problems that 7s do in the way where they can become addicted to drugs and alcohol, and even more so because they have that visceral aggression and the need to go hard in the paint. 8s are the traditional masculine, 2s are the traditional feminine, and they have a lot in common. Both of them, when they're in childhood, felt the need to become the maternal or fraternal figure in their lives. 2s, they grow up and they feel like they need to have a nurturing mother role because they feel like that space isn't being fulfilled. And 8s, they feel like when they're growing up, they feel like they need to step in as the father role, even in a woman. They sense that there is no masculinity in their lives and they try to fill that space with masculinity. And so 8s usually have a father that kind of disappoints them, or a father that doesn't live up to, maybe an absent father, a father that doesn't live up to their expectations. And when 8s are a child, they can be really needy kids and they get neglected by that father figure, and that often turns them into this hyper masculine person. And they kind of resent their neediness. They have to grow up really fast, and they kind of get this mentality, much like the 7, that they have to be out for themselves and nobody's going to come and save you. You have to be your own savior. And that kind of hardens them up a bit. And that gives them that challenging edge that we all know that 8s have. Eight's gift is passion, but their sin is lust. And passion and lust are almost the same thing, but there's a little bit of a difference there. With lust, it's an uncontrollable need to acquire something. With passion, it is a stemming from within to go out and better the world. So eights need a passion, or else they'll be driven by their impulses. They'll be driven by, a lot of the times, lust is sex. They'll be driven by their sexual impulses and usually be a slave to that. Or they can be a slave to drugs and alcohol. Or they can be a slave to their emotions. This is the lustiness that they have within them. And they have to transcend that lust and go into passion and find something productive where they can put themselves so that they don't get distracted and venture off on these paths and get lost. Some famous people that are eights. Candace Owens, I already mentioned this, but Andrew Tate is a quintessential eight. He's, I think, more of an unhealthy eight, though, because he kind of has a big ego, and that's usually when they're not doing so good internally. They have a big ego. But that's also just kind of the nature of an eight when they're doing very well, is that they can't be small about it. They have to be very big about their successes and stuff like that. So Andrew Tate, Candace Owens, Tom Brady is an eight. He's super competitive. All the Super Bowl rings he has. But something about Tom Brady is that if you've seen the Tom Brady roast that was recently, when you talk to him, he doesn't seem to be aggressive. He seems very calm and, has a really good personality. And that is when you can tell that an eight is healthy, because they have an avenue to channel their aggression in. A lot of MMA fighters are like this. Max Holloway, for example, super chill guy. But when he gets in the ring, he's a different animal because he has that outlet. He has that passion. He's fulfilled. So he doesn't need to go and display put his balls on the table, his proverbial balls on the table, and show everybody like an Andrew Tate does. You know what I mean? Andrew Tate, I don't think has an outlet anymore. I think he did when he had kickboxing. But now I think he just wants to go around and show everybody how big his balls are, and that kind of makes his balls look even smaller, in my opinion. But they're identified with the warrior type. So superheroes that are eights. This one is kind of funny, but Rocket the Raccoon is an eight, believe it or not. He wants to be the leader. He's often shown as kind of a toxic masculinity kind of person, where his need for power and control just kind of gets laughed at, and everybody laughs at him and kind of just shoos him away and is like, oh Rocket, that's so cute. And the more that they do that, the more angrier he gets, the more fiery he gets, the more he needs to show them that he's the boss. And that's why he's an eight. He's more on the unhealthy side, but it's funny in movies to kind of poke fun at the eight mask and vibrato that they have, because it can be because that's how you kind of deal with them too sometimes, is not really doing anything and kind of laughing them off and being like, okay, that's how you deal with an eight when they're your boss, or they're in a position of authority over you, or they're your opponent. Meeting them at their anger is what they really want you to do. And if you don't do that and you kind of remain calm and you do this Wu Wei kind of thing, Chinese Wu Wei, you don't aggress forward. You wait, and when the person attacks you, you move out of the way, you counter, you remain calm. And in a lot of ways, the Chinese are kind of the opposite of the eight. They think overt aggression is like bullheaded and kind of stupid. And so they have this kind of higher way that they think is better, which is like the Wu Wei, wait for your opponent to attack you and move with their punches, or kind of like judo. And you got to play mental judo with eights sometimes, so that you don't get wrapped up in their anger and you don't meet them at it, because then that's exactly what they want you to do. And they're right there. I don't know why I went off on that tangent. I was talking about Rocket Raccoon, and I went off on that tangent, but yeah, that Rocket is an eight. Now, eights are identified with the King, Warrior, Magician, and Lover, those archetypes. I love those archetypes. And eights are identified with the warrior energy. No surprise there. When eights start to move into their 9 wing, they can become the king, the benevolent king that they know, because they don't have to aggress forward anymore. The 9 is all about peace and calm and stillness and observing. A good king doesn't have to get his hands dirty. He lets people handle things for him. That's when the 8 can transform too, is when they sit and allow and they become the king that they're always meant to be, but they have to be the warrior first, a lot of times in their younger years. And then when they usually embody the warrior in their younger years when they're trying to climb their way to the top and figure out who they are. And then once they get to the top, they can't stay. If they stay in that warrior energy, then it kind of makes them look a little weird. And when they don't mature into the king, if they keep being the warrior forever, they turn into like this kind of Kanye West figure. And a lot of people respect Kanye West, but Kanye West is past the time to be a warrior. It's now time for Kanye West to be a king, and he's not listening to that. He wants to continue to be controversial, to continue to be this get them before they get me mentality that the warrior has, the shadow side of the warrior, I should say, has. So yeah, the warrior archetype is the 3 and the 8. The 3 is the noble warrior. The 8 is the kind of savage warrior who chops down his opponent and is formidable. That's the 8s. So 8s are the masculine, the traditional masculine. This is the masculine that society tells boys that they need to be. But as of late, they kind of been telling women that they need to be this kind of aggressive, go forth and be bold kind of figure now. And it's weird how our culture just holds on to like very simplified archetypes of masculine and femininity. They think that our culture thinks that masculine is this 8 overt aggression, and that's the only type of masculine you can be. And they think that femininity is just, and if you're not masculine, then you must be feminine. And there's no in between, there's no nuance there. There's no kind of you understanding the feminine, understanding the masculine and feminine, and using them where you pick strategically. That's where I think we all need to be. We all need to understand the masculine energy and the feminine energy and use them strategically where we need them to go. You may need to be more feminine at times and yield and be more introspective and reflective and creative. You may need to be more masculine, more power driven, more power hungry, more passionate, more assertive, more dominant when you're going to get stuff that you need to get. You need both masculine and feminine, and they both have a place in males and in females. But if we just continue to champion this one way of being masculine and this one way of being feminine that's very limited, we're not going to get any far. That's why we have things like toxic masculinity, because people have such a narrow view of masculinity. People don't really know where masculinity fits in today's world. And it's because we have to change masculinity and femininity constantly as we evolve through these next phases. This type of masculinity was very good to have when we were hunter-gatherers, maybe even in wars and in times like that. But now with, wars on the decline, kind of, I guess, there needs to be a new masculine, and we have to figure out what that's going to be. I don't know what it looks like. I know that there does need to be an introspective king aspect to that new masculine, and it can't just be overt aggression. My light just fell down. But anyway, I'm going to wrap that up here. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're watching on Instagram, go ahead, hit that like button above. I say this in every single video, but I'm just trying out new video clips, and I hope this one does good. This light fell. It's white now, but I like the red filter on it, so I got to fix that. Thank you guys, and I will see you in the next video.